All right, we're going to call this finance meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We can tell everybody they can sit in these seats during this meeting. Steve, you guys can use those seats.
Yeah. That's for after this meeting. You guys can sit in those chairs.
We can sit up front.
Yeah. All right, I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Brown. Questions? Please vote on your iPad. Motion passes 13-0. Public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Department recommendations.
We not do minutes from this?
Did I not?
I think we just did the agenda.
Oh, did I? Okay, sorry about that. Motion to approve the minutes dated March 21st, 2018. Moved by Duge, supported by Sager. Please vote on your iPad. Sorry about that. Motion passes 13-0. Department recommendations, we'll start with the bypass item 2018 equalization report with our Director of Equalization, Kristen Sela.
Good afternoon. I think it's still afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and present the 2018 equalization report for your review and approval. As I typically come before you in April to present the final values as of the conclusion of March board review for all the local units. The report is quite lengthy, and there's a lot of numbers in there, and it's just a tabular report of all the numbers put all together from all the units and school districts. And so there's just a couple pages that I would like to point out that you may be interested in looking at. The first one is page 9. It's the state equalized value, taxable value line graph. And this is it gives a good graphical representation of the historical relationship between state equalized value and taxable values within the county since 2004. So you can see, where the values crested and then the crash, and now we're in that recovery period. The road to 2018 from the initial point of state equalized value recovery in 2013 has been somewhat unstable. When you compare the SEVs to the taxable values, you'll see that the SEVs are rising sometimes at a crazy rate. What year is it? The 2015 jump from 14 was 10.5%, and that's not a typical jump. It's kind of large. I don't, as an assessing professional, I don't really like to see the values jump that high in 1 year. But on the taxable value side, we went up a little, then we went way up, then we came down, and then we're back up again. The taxable value, we've had a couple of legislative changes that have had some effects on taxable values, but that big one for the reduction between 15 and 16 was the EMPP, that eligible manufacturing personal property exemption. That was the first year that it came off the roll, and as I've kind of explained in the past, it was a lot of it coming off of the roll. It was everything from a certain year above and a certain year below. Since then, it's only been the current year coming off the roll, and so that's why we're seeing a little bit more stabilized loss in the personal property. But that first year, it was somewhere in the 800 million mark that we had lost, and this year it's only 53. So there's a big difference between those couple of years. But I just wanted to point that out. That's a nice graph, and I'm going to continue to do that for you guys. The next page that I would like to point out is page 39, and hopefully I'm referring to the correct pages in the agenda packet for you guys to follow. Am I?
There's something
Something isn't lit.
Your pages
I went right to the agenda packet and printed it so that it was exactly matching. Yeah, the summary of, it's the all local units, summary of 2018 valuations. Yeah, it has an actual, you guys put a page number on the bottom of it when the report was. Yeah, all local units. Okay, 48 in your. Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, so on that page, once we all get there, this is a nice little report. It gives you parcel counts, it gives you the March Board of Review assessed values, and then the true cash values were what I came up with and presented to you guys back in December in the equalization study. And as you can see, all of the final ratios between the assessed values and where we were with the true cash values are all between the statutory 49 to 50%. So that means I don't have to factor any units. Everybody is in compliance from where they're supposed to be. And so our county equalized values will be exactly what the assessed values came out to be at the conclusion of the March Board Review. Okay? Any questions on that one? Okay. Then the next page I'd like to point out, digitally 44, it's called Summary of 2018 County Equalized Valuation Changes, and it's just a little box. I'm so sorry. I really tried to be good this time.
Is it the one that starts with?
County Equalized Value 2017. It's a box. Kind of. Got it? Got it? Okay. What's nice about this page is it shows you where we started and where we ended up from 17 to 18. And I just wanted to point out, local units have reported an overall increase in their market values of 2.7. So that's not bad. Our CPI this year is 2.1, so that's a good, nice, steady increase, keeping in line with what's going on out in the real world. And then we also have just under 1% of new construction. And that's going to be primarily north of Hall Road, but that's still good to see. You know, we have a lot of things going on. I see a lot of permits, a lot of new buildings going up in places that I never thought I'd see. New construction, some in the older city developments. So we're still having some significant new construction within the county. And so that's always a good, healthy, stable sign. So the overall then assessment change for this year was 3.64. Something that you guys may be interested in for the residents that you represent on my page 48, the digital page 48, not quite sure what the other one is. It's government unit, average residential true cash values, and they're listed there by unit. And still getting there?
57.
I really do try to avoid this. It happens every time. I'm so sorry. We have all the average home values for residential properties by community, and for Macomb County, 181,873 is the average residential value. So that's pretty good. You know, that's a nice big number up there. Okay, and then the last page I want to point out to you is the very next page. So whatever number that is, it's 49 for me. Next one for you guys. This is the ad valorem taxable value change, and the reason I'm pointing this out is this is going to affect the taxes and millage rates and all that kind of stuff. And the fact that the assessments increased at 3.64, which we just saw a couple pages ago, and the taxable values increased at just above 4%. And part of the reason is because of that market growth, because we didn't have as big a change in that EMPP loss, that eligible manufacturing loss, and because we have some new construction going on. And so that's why it's a little bit higher. We had a lot of sales, and so we have a real good market going on in Macomb County right now. And those were the only pages that I really wanted to point out, but I would be happy to answer any questions. Welcome any questions from the board.
Okay, first I'll seek a motion to move this on to full board, moved by Leonetti, support by Duge. I don't have any speakers on here. Okay, with that, please vote on your iPad.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for not having any questions. That means
Motion
it's,
passes 13-0.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Item number 7, Health and Human Service Committee recommendations. Can we take A, B, and C in their entirety? Moved by Gillette, support by Lucido. Please vote on your iPad. Motion passes 13-0. Oh, 12-0. Okay. Next, we have Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee recommendations. A through H, there is a bypass item on here. Does anybody want to do the bypass separately? Okay, I'll take a motion to take them in their entirety. Moved by Brown, support by Leonetti. Any questions? Please vote on your iPad.
Who made the motions?
Brown is supported by Leonetti. Motion passes 13-0. Justice and Public Safety Committee recommendations, A and B. Is there a motion to take them together? Moved by Duge, supported by Sager. Any questions? Please vote on your iPad. Motion passes 13-0. Next, we have Government Operations Committee recommendations. There's one recommendation, settle agreement, Macomb County Circuit Court case number 17-001689-NO. Is there a motion? Moved by Toko, supported by Lucido. Please vote on your iPad. Motion passes 13-0. Presentation, Smart Ballot Language Proposal. We have John Hertel here, and we also have, I know we have Fred with us. Fred Barber. Hello, Mr. Hertel.
Madam Chairperson, nice to see you. Members of the board, nice to see all of you. And Mr. Chairman Smith, nice to see you. I always enjoy coming back here because of the fact that I was a member of the board when this board, out of the 3 boards in Southeast Michigan, did the absolute right thing when they created SMART, and that was to create a system that covered the whole county. That doesn't occur in Wayne County, and that does not occur in Oakland. They allow opt-outs. And we did the right thing the first time, and it's been the right thing. Interestingly enough, by the way, since I've had this job for 8 years, this is the 3rd time I'm around on millage, because the first 10 weeks I had the job was the first millage I had to get renewed. And that 8 years has flown by. But during the 8 years, I've taken one trip around the country to look at other systems. I have, however, communicated a lot with directors of systems across the country. And the interesting thing that I wanted to mention to you is that we are the only transit system in the nation that allows opt-outs. And it is very difficult in terms of one aspect of SMART, because when you're trying to run a transit system and you have opt-outs, it's like having opt-outs of a railroad or opt-outs out of a freeway. And in effect, it makes it very, very difficult to be efficient in those places, whereas in Macomb County, it's very easy to be efficient. And it's one of the reasons why, for instance, Gratiot happens to be our most utilized route in the entire system. I think the most important thing for me to say to you in talking about SMART's renewal of its millage is, number one, our job is to move people who don't have other ways of getting around, and 70% or more of our riders every day are going to work. So it's not only extremely important for them, but it's extremely important for the economy of Southeast Michigan. On top of that, we're in a situation where we're also bringing people from 8 Mile Road, because DDOT doesn't leave Detroit. We're bringing people from 8 Mile Road to work in Macomb County. The rest of the riders are riders that are divided up amongst people who have disabilities or people who are seniors and can no longer drive, and oftentimes people who aren't even old enough to drive and they're trying to get to school. So in effect, we provide what I would call underlined essential transportation for these people. And when I'm going past one of our bus stops, I consistently think over and over again, if it wasn't for SMART, I don't know what these people would be doing. And if it wasn't for SMART, I don't know what terrible effect it would have on Southeast Michigan in numerous ways. I want to always make sure that I particularly point out one of our most unique parts of our system, and that is the connector system that we have, where people can call in and have that transportation actually come to their home and take them to the doctor, or take them to get groceries, or take them to a social activity that otherwise they wouldn't be able to get to. I know time's very important, so while I'd love to rhapsodize about this for a much longer time, I did want to tell you that the last time I was here officially and talking about SMART and asked you to approve the millage, I was asking you to almost double the millage at that time. I walked in here with a 0.59 millage that was in effect for years and years, and we were being put into a position where we had to ask you to raise it to 1 mil. And the reason was, the number one reason, all of our buses at that time had over 500,000 miles on them. They literally were failing. And not only were they failing, but our maintenance costs had skyrocketed. On top of that, we were in a situation where we were the lowest millaged transit organization in the state. Now, when I talk about that, I want to point out to you that there are places in the state like Grand Rapids and Lansing and other places that have 2 and 3 mills that operate their systems. And we were asking at that time to go from 0.59 to 1 whole mill so that we could buy new buses. And I'm really pleased to tell you that we have kept our promise, and we have replaced the entire line haul system with big buses. Our last order went in last fall for the last 35 buses. And on top of that, we have continually, gradually, over this 4-year period, replaced the connector buses with propane buses. And by connecting with propane instead of diesel or biodiesel, we're in a situation where, number one, the buses are cheaper. Number two, the buses are cheaper to run. Number three, they have less maintenance. Number four, they're quieter. Number five, they're cleaner. And number six, they last longer. So it's been a tremendous improvement for us to have the connectors that are now in the propane situation. I'm not asking you for an increase this time. This time I'm asking that we continue with the 1 mil, and that we continue, obviously, the tremendous record that Macomb County has had in having a unified system that serves the entire county. And I would be happy to answer any questions. And we have a program to present to the full board later, but we know you have other important things to do right now in at this time. Madam Chairperson, that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Before I call on Commissioner Carabelli, two things. Just a minor correction. You're not asking us to approve it. You're asking us to approve putting it on the ballot so that the voters can vote on it.
I'm asking you, as always, for you to give the voters the choice.
Yes. And just before I call on commissioners, would you just like to mention who's here with you since they've come?
Well, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And
Okay.
I would like them each to just say a couple sentences about what they do. Of course, you know Fred Barber. Fred, go ahead.
Just barely knows Fred. No one knows Fred. I'm the ombudsman. My wife does make good cookies, and a bunch of other stuff too. Come over.
Okay, yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I mean, well, first thing, we're expecting the presentation that you plan on making would be at this meeting rather than at full board.
Okay.
And then full board would be just our final vote on it, because we're going to be voting on, at this meeting, to move it on to full board.
We would be very happy to do that. I was just under the impression that you, because you had guests coming, that we might not have enough time.
Well, now's the time to do it before they arrive. So, do you want the presentation first, or would you like to ask a question, Commissioner Carabelli? Okay, since you already had your name up, I'm going to let Commissioner Carabelli ask his question, and then if you have a presentation. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When you say renew, is that technically correct? Because are you at 1 mil
Yes.
right now, today?
Yes.
So nothing got rolled back on anything that was going on?
What was that?
Pardon?
We rolled back under the heavily to.
So it's actually a slight increase,
Yes.
okay? I mean, apples are apples, oranges are oranges, so
Okay.
this is an increase, number one. You asked for the increase, was it back in 2014?
Yes,
From 0.59 mils to 1 mil?
that's correct.
Okay. And you said you were doing that so you can purchase all new buses?
Yes.
Okay, my first question for you is if you did that to purchase new buses, when these buses get old, what are you gonna do?
Well, what we're doing now is number one, we're in a situation where we're on top of the situation with new buses, so that we are in a circumstance where we gradually will be able to replace them rather than have a whole fleet go bad that was there way too long.
Okay, my thought process is a little different. You buy everything at one time, you replace them, guess what? You're gonna get smacked again at one time.
We haven't bought them at one time. We've bought them over 3 years.
So over 3 years. So when you start out to go buy them again, for 3 years, you're gonna have to buy new ones because they're all gonna expire pretty close to the same time. Because I'm sure you're taking your low mileage ones and replacing them with the high mileage areas so that you can equally disperse use, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, with that said, we turned around and the voters approved the increase and you were gonna buy buses. Well, now that you already bought the buses with that increase, you're not gonna be coming back in the future and asking for an increase in, what's the lifespan of the bus?
Well, it depends. It's the mileage, really. It's
What's on mileage in a perfect scenario?
It's a half a million miles.
So at 500,000 miles, in how many years is that in your formula?
It depends, but it's 10 to 12.
Okay, so 10 to 12 years, you're gonna start your replacement cycle again. And we all know the price goes up as things go on from when you first start something. My question is that the fluctuation of the taxes, and you're asking for a mill, she just reported to us our values. So you really didn't have that in your formula until tonight, and it's getting signed and turned in, I think, tomorrow to the state. So you're kind of putting a formula together, not really knowing what your target's gonna be, and you're asking for a mill, and you don't really even know what the values are gonna be and what you're gonna get. And that's really confusing to me, how you can budget out and plan when you don't know the values of the properties, if they're going up or if they're going down, and how much money you really need. And this is a struggle financially. I'm not talking about use or anything else. It's just, I'm looking at the business case right now And all the other communities are doing the same thing. They have to sign their rolls, and it's got to get turned in. Now you're going to know what those values are going to be. You're going to know at a mill what you'll return. Do you need to increase it to a full mill? Will you be satisfied with the increase of 3.9% or 4%? So is that more than you anticipated, so you don't need to ask for the whole mill?
Okay, well, let me first explain to you that there is no way to have a crystal ball as to what's going to happen. When I took over, we were in a situation where we had just suffered from the '08 decline. The first thing I did was renegotiate all of the labor contracts and lay off 20% of the employees. And that was in order for us to stay in business. What you have to do is what you have to do depending on the circumstances that are facing you. We're in a situation where we serve, if you took all next 9 of the transit systems in this state and added their square mileage together, our system serves more square miles than all those 9 together. And we're doing it with the least amount of money.
All due respect, Madam Chair, I appreciate that. It's not answering my question.
I can't, it's very difficult to answer.
I understand. That's why I asked it, because I couldn't figure it out. And I'm trying to see why you need to bump it back up after the rollback to 1 mill when the value of properties are going higher. And it would actually capture more money at the current mill at the rollback spot today. And just carrying that forward with the values going up, that you would actually even have more money than what you had before, but yet you're asking for that little bit of an increase.
One of the reasons we're doing it is because we're treating all 3 of the counties simultaneously the same in
Okay.
terms of the.
You brought that up. That was going to be my next question, so I'll ask you that. How many dollars were paid out since 2014 out of Macomb County? And then how many dollars in SMART were spent back into Macomb County?
Dave?
Okay, so our return is for every $1 of local tax revenue we collect, we expend $1.78. And that's basically representing the leveraging of state and federal and other dollars other than local tax revenue. And we keep that proportional to the counties. So it's
Again, I
that same-
apologize, and maybe I didn't ask it correctly. I appreciate you leveraging the dollars for more. My question is, the tax dollars from 2014 to today that were spent out of Macomb County, what came back to Macomb County? Not the extra $1.75. So if we put in $100 million, did we get $100 million back out of tax dollars, not the matching money? Or did we get $80 million of our $100 million back? Or did we get some of Oakland and Wayne counties' money back?
So at SMART, the way we budget between the 3 counties is the same proportion of dollars you pay in from a local tax revenue standpoint is the same proportion that goes back out. So if Macomb County paid in 30% of the local tax revenue, if you add all 3 counties together, then we make sure that our service delivery in that county is within 1% of that number going back. So you're getting back within 1% plus or minus, you're getting back everything that you put into SMART in the service we're providing in Macomb County.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, thank you.
Okay, before I call on anybody else, let's go ahead and get through the presentation as quickly as possible because there may be a lot of questions.
Okay. And we didn't quite get there, but I'm Robert Kramer. I'm the Deputy General Manager at SMART. And because of time, I believe you all have a copy of the slides from the presentation. I'm following along on paper, so I don't have to keep looking up. And I'll try to keep it brief, but of course, we're still here to answer any questions. So next slide, please. Next slide again. So SMART in Macomb County, this is one of the numbers we just mentioned in response to the first question. When we leverage the other dollars that are coming in, for every $1 of local tax revenue, you're getting back $1.78 in service. Like I said, within 1% of the share that comes in, we make sure that our budget balances every year to send that service back out into the county that it came from. Next slide. On this one, you can just see these orange circles are all of the community transit agencies that we support. And in a second, I'll go over kind of how that fits into our overall layers of service picture. But these are all of the programs. In some cases, they're one community, Mount Clemens, for example. In other cases, it may be a group that's comprised of several communities. Shelby Township and Utica share a similar system. Richmond Lennox covers 11 communities in northeast Macomb County. But this is kind of our reach of the community partnership program that was developed when the millage was first brought before voters in the 1990s. Next slide. Brief table here that just shows kind of how we compare to rates of other transit properties across the state that have property tax millage funding. You can see we're close to the bottom here. As Mr. Hertel pointed out, our service area is quite a bit larger than most of the others on this list. Next slide. So, smart service layers. When we're out talking about smart to people who may or may not know about it, we like to talk about that we are kind of a mobility facilitators. We have many layers of transportation. This is not a fixed route bus system only. And part of the idea behind SMART is that every community, large and small across the 3 counties, and especially in Macomb County, is we're going to make sure that we can do everything we can to meet the specific needs of your community, whatever those needs might be, but also to serve the largest system as a whole. So the top layer is the one that's kind of the most visible. If you're, let's say, south of 23 Mile, it's our fixed route buses. Those are our larger buses. They run a fixed schedule, a fixed route. People can count on them coming. It is by far, it's over 90% of our ridership is on this mode of travel. The second layer is the connector service. That's, Mr. Hertel mentioned, is a door-to-door advanced reservation service that can go up to 10 miles, and that's kind of an inter-community service. For the most part, it is open to anyone who wants to use it, but for the most part, the riders on that service are seniors and or disabled people that need to get to medical appointments. We prioritize medical appointments when we schedule, the grocery store, wherever they need to go around the region. The next layer is kind of a subset of connector. It's called the ADA Paratransit Complementary Service. So this is a service that we're required to provide per the Americans with Disabilities Act, where if you live near a fixed route and if you were able-bodied, you'd be able to use fixed route to go to your destination, but your disability prevents you from doing that. We provide an equivalent door-to-door service to allow you to make that trip. And that's the same small connector buses also provide that service as well. The next layer, which was the orange dots on that map, is called our Community Partnership Program. This is a program where SMART actually sends a small portion of the taxes collected in Macomb County back to the communities for them to decide how to meet some of their local community needs. So if you think about our connector bus or the fixed route as kind of the inter-community or inter-county service, this layer would be more of an intra-community, okay? So it's picking up seniors and getting them to the senior center. Oftentimes these programs are run through senior centers or parks and recreation departments, and they're really making those local connections to get people where they need to go within their individual community. And as I mentioned, that the map shows those orange dots that represent that. In addition to all of those layers, SMART also has a role across all 3 counties, whether the communities are opt-in or out, and also in Monroe County, we're the administrators of a number of state and federal grant programs, and so we do have a reach. If you're out in western Oakland County and you see a bus that has SMART on the side, the bus is not lost. That's a bus that's funded through other dollars other than local taxes. It's a relatively small number of vehicles, but it is another important role that SMART plays in the region. Next slide. This is some pretty pictures. Next slide. Growing community partnerships. So as I've mentioned several times, we really pride ourselves on treating each individual community with a great deal of attention. And so from our last couple of years, these are kind of some of the big highlights we have. The first one and the 2 pictures here are, I know at least a couple of you were at the ribbon cutting for this dedication of this building out in Richmond. This is the Richmond Lennox EMS Station Number 1, which is a shared facility between the EMS portion of their operation and the Smart Community Transit portion. This was funded about 50%, which is kind of the share of the vehicles and usage for the building. With federal and state dollars, we were able to leverage and help administer the procurement for that project to get it constructed so that they have a place to have all of their vehicles inside. So that's the most visible accomplishment, I would say, because it's a physical structure that's in place there. We also helped fund some facility improvements to the Mount Clemens garage where they store their vehicles using grant funds as well. We were approved some additional of those community credit local dollar refunds to the CPP programs as part of our latest new service initiative. And then if you go to the next slide, which is the same text but just a different picture, we have been continuing to replace vehicles with state and local grant, or state and federal grant dollars for a number of community partnership programs. This article is from the one of the supersized small buses that St. Clair Shores recently received and put into service. Next slide. No, I'm out of order. Hold on. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, and I'm going to kind of breeze through these quickly. Mr. Hertel basically already covered these. So promises kept. The 2014, we requested a significant increase. We had a number of challenges taking place, mostly tied to the severe decline that all of you are very familiar with in the local tax revenue. So we were looking at over $5 million deficit with nothing else changed as far as the rate in 2014. So we needed to balance the budget. We had all 5 union contracts were up for negotiation. We had a number of capital needs. The most important and visible of those is the fixed route buses, and we've prioritized the replacement of those vehicles over all of our other capital needs. We still have tens of millions of dollars of maintenance and repairs that are needed to take place at our facilities. So we knocked those buses out first and foremost, but we still do have other work to do. As he mentioned, we replaced as many small buses as possible as they become eligible for replacement. With propane fuel, we're about 70% done. Our latest order will take us to about 85%, so hopefully in the next year we'll have 100% of our small bus fleet will be propane fuel, which has some great cost savings in addition to the other benefits. We're going to continue to replace the community buses and vans. We just placed another order for 47 of those vehicles. That's across the 3-county area, but that's a typical to have 1 or 2 of those orders every year. And then if we got to the bottom of that list, we had some major service cuts, 22% budget reduction in 2011. And so our hope was that if we could get kind of good progress on all of these check boxes, level off and stabilize our capital needs issues, we might be able to start restoring some of the service that we cut back in 2011, and that is the fast service. You'll see the buses on Gratiot, frequent, affordable, safe transit, which also, with that improvement, we also increased the budget for the connector service and also had a increase to those community credits that fund the other layer. So in that project, we turned back on a small sustainable amount of additional funding for service to all of the layers of our transportation system. Next slide. Just real briefly, as I mentioned, we had over a $5 million deficit, and we took care of the union contracts. Next slide. This is the schedule of when we had the buses ordered and placed into service. And just as long as it was mentioned, something we are considering this time around is there are some transit agencies that will do a midlife overhaul on some of their buses, which then allows you to extend it an extra few years. That's one technique that we could use to spread out even more so than what we've done so far, the replacement schedule, because we don't want to run up against that same, even if it's over a couple-year period. But we will have more funding available to take care of that compared to in the past when we had reductions. Next slide. This is our Macomb facility is in Clinton Township. We have a huge project there to replace the underground storage tanks and parking lot that's been long overdue, that we're hopeful we'll be able to jump right into, assuming the funding is approved. Next slide. Actually, I think if you have the rest of these slides, I think I'll stop the presentation there to make sure you have plenty of time for questions. But I appreciate everyone listening so intently.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the excellent presentation. Chairman Hertel, it's good to see you again.
Nice to see you, Leon. Commissioner Gillette, excuse me.
That's fine. I did have a couple of questions. One was on the $1.78 in service for every dollar that we contribute in tax value or tax revenue, and it was stated that that extra 78 cents is from leveraged state and federal grants and so forth. Would that be the money that comes through the Act 51 road funding formula that dedicates up to 10% of our gas taxes and vehicle registration fees go to mass transit? Does SMART serve sort of as the
David?
Yeah. My question was, the Act 51 road funding formula provides up to 10% of our gas tax revenues and our vehicle registration fees that go to mass transit. And would it be correct to assume that SMART is the sort of the recipient of those funds for Southeast Michigan region? And that's where that extra 78 cents in service toward Macomb comes from.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the majority of the 78 cents would be from Act 51 dollars. It does flow through another regional agency to get to us, and it's based on reimbursement. So basically, every agency in the state gets a certain percent, about 30% reimbursement on eligible expenses. That's how the money comes through to us. If we spend the money, then that leverages those dollars.
I see. So before we had SMART at all, and perhaps Mr. Hertel is the only one who can remember that far back, but, well, I'm sorry, Marv.
I'm tripping over my bed.
But, prior to SMART essentially providing that particular service and coordinating that service from the Act 51 formulas, the local communities would get that money directly, but they had to spend some money directly in order to receive those Act 51 formula revenues. Is that correct?
Well, there was a different organization at that time, and that was SEMTA.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so it would have had to be before SEMTA, because even SEMTA got money through Act
Right.
51.
So essentially, Act 51 is the way that a good percentage of mass transit is funded from those gas tax revenues that are dedicated to mass transit.
It is an important amount,
Right.
although whenever we see anything else that's at the federal or state level that's available, we apply.
Absolutely. Next question would be, John, or Mr. Hertel, you mentioned that you had restructured contracts as part of the work you had to do in the Great Recession.
Yeah, with all 5 unions, yes.
Okay, so were all SMART employees then switched to defined contribution pension plans, or do they still have defined benefit pension plans?
No, they were all switched.
So there's no employees currently that have defined benefit?
Go ahead.
Good evening.
It was a combination, but go ahead, he's going to explain the
Okay,
combination.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so good evening, Commissioners. I'm David Sabuda. I'm the Director of Finance for SMART. To answer your question, Commissioner, there are 9 divisions within our pension systems, and those 9 are defined benefit. What we did is we moved to, on the healthcare side, everybody went, after a certain date, went to a defined contribution healthcare plan. So when they retire, instead of getting a Blue Cross card, they now have a defined contribution account so that they could pay their health care when they retire. So right now, to recap, the pensions are DB, defined benefit, and those plans have all been, there are 6 out of the 9 plans have been capped. So you can't, the benefits have been negotiated downward, and then you've got 3 new groups that are open within those 9. And then on the healthcare side, basically everyone after 2007, they don't get a Blue Cross card at retirement. We work with them on a defined contribution healthcare plan.
Okay, so on the healthcare, it's defined contribution, which
Yeah.
is sort of a new concept to me, but on the pension side, it's primarily a defined benefit.
That's correct. So, and what ended up happening is the oldest groups have been capped, and you can't get into those higher benefit groups any longer. The multiplier rates and the final average compensation, what goes into final average compensation, has been reduced considerably in those 3 new groups as new hires come into the plan.
So those sound like valuable reforms, but the state has essentially, in the 90s, moved everybody to defined contribution plans, and the county has moved all new employees to defined contribution plans at the pension level. And at most local levels of government, there are exceptions, it's defined contribution now. So why would the SMART still have defined benefit plans?
Well, again, I want to point out, first of all, that we've capped the older plans and we have reduced the benefits for the 3 new plans. It's a recruiting tool. It brings people in and holds those employees for us. Those would be the biggest, that's the biggest sale of a defined benefit pension for us. That's it. You get a good quality person who can drive a bus carefully and efficiently, and you're providing a economic benefit for that. And it retains those good drivers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a couple other quick questions. The 2018 budget for SMART projects a smaller fare box recovery amount, total dollars, than 2017. Is that, why is it that the fare box recovery dollars are decreasing from 2017 to 2018 budgets?
Commissioner, what I'd like to point out is this, we're looking at an increase with the new FAST program. We're going from $2.5 to $2.9 million. That's what we're projecting in our upcoming 19 budget with the new programs implemented by SMART with the FAST program.
So, but the 18 budget, from 17 to 18?
We are seeing, from 17 to 18, we did see a slight reduction, but when we appropriated, but as we see the actual revenues coming in and with the implementation of FAST,
Right.
our actual collections seem to be moving up.
I did read about
Over-appropriation.
the FAST system attracting higher numbers of riders, but that's good. But I'm not sure what percent of riders are riding FAST compared to what percent are riding all the other, fixed routes and all the other various things. So I don't know if that results in net improvement. Since 2014, according to the state, ridership has been declining since the nearly doubling of the millage. Now I realize that's not an indictment of SMART specifically, that across the nation, it's been the trend, that ridership in mass transit has been declining. And SMART has just been part of that, caught up in that, whatever factors are at play. But I just wanted to know if...
Well, I want you to know that in the first 3 months of this year, and I think mainly because of the new system that we instituted. By the way, we didn't go out to some company and hire some company to come up with the name FAST. We did that on our own. It's Frequent, Affordable, Safe Transit. And since we've changed to that, in the first 3 months, the ridership in Macomb, where we already had the highest ridership, is up 7%. The ridership...
On FAST or the entire, all systems within SMART Macomb?
All the line haul systems in Macomb County.
So I will see, when I look at the state numbers next year, that ridership in Macomb County is up 7%, not just on FAST, but across the board.
In terms of line haul, I'm talking about. In terms of the other two counties, they're up much higher in terms of the line haul.
Okay, so you've reversed, you believe, the 4-year trend
Well,
of
for the
declining
first 3
ridership.
months, we've reversed it. And I'm hoping because of the weather and the fact that we're in a situation where people are learning more and more about FAST, that it may even get better.
Okay. I mean, one of the concerns is that the Census Bureau reports that less than 2% of Macomb residents use mass transit as a source of getting to work. That's the Census Bureau's number. And it's always a concern that how many dollars do we dedicate to less than 2%? And that's a theoretical question, not one that I necessarily expect you to answer. Okay, I thank you for the question, or for answering the questions and for your presentation.
Thanks very much for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Myjack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you, John, here today. I will be supporting this ballot language proposal. I want to be fast because we're on a time schedule today. The second thing is, Commissioner Carabelli, I understand where you're coming from, but if we go along, in terms of SMART getting more revenue coming in, but we have to look at our own county as well. Everyone who pays taxes come into Macomb County government, and I've spoken about this through the past budget process, that we're taking in more money that we can afford to give the residents a tax cut with more revenue coming in. So I would just add that. But with that said, John, I just want to ask something that doesn't pertain to SMART. I got to ask you this. You've been in transit for a long time. You understand the politics of the region. I got to ask you very, very briefly, if you can, about the RTA and that millage, and what does that proposal do that would help out or would not help out SMART? If you can, very, very briefly.
I'll do it very quickly. I think what is important for people to know is the big issue right now is whether or not the millage should be put on the ballot this year, because of the fact that the SMART millage is already in the process of hopefully getting on the ballot.
Right.
So what is caused a great deal of concern first is how confusing would this be to the public, and would that confusion lead to no votes for either one or both? That's one aspect. The other aspect is how actually the funds would be divided if the RTA millage passed. And because of the fact that both our county executive and the county executive of Oakland County have looked at the plan and have said that the plan would be literally one where we were much more of a donor situation in Macomb or a donor situation in Oakland, that they have opposed it because of the way in which the money would get divided.
Can I ask
under-
one question very
Sure.
quickly? If SMART were to pass and if this RTA millage were to pass, how does that work financially? That would be combined into one?
No.
Or they're still two separate entities?
They would be two
Thank you.
separate
Please
entities. Yes, they would be two separate entities. However, what would happen is that separate millage would be determined on a separate basis by a separate board. And that board would decide how that money was going to be sent out. And that's why I'm talking about the fact that in terms of that pile of money, we would, in terms of the present plan that's been put forth, now when I say we, Macomb and Oakland would appear to be based on the determinations of both this county executive's office and the county executive office in Oakland, rather donor counties rather than receiving equal amounts. Now, that has been argued on the other side saying, no, that's not the case, or in fact, that the plan can still be modified. And the plan has not been approved, so the plan still could, in fact, be modified.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Hertel.
How are you, sir?
Good. Just a couple of quick ones. First, Mr. Carabelli, to me, personally, made a lot of sense. And I'm not patting him on the back for it, but he did make a lot of sense. With these valuations going up, there's going to be more money available, and yet you're asking for the same thing again in lieu of saying, everybody loves taxes. That's Leandro Letts, as we know, favorite subject. And it makes a lot of sense when it says, hey, you're getting additional money anyway, now you're still asking for the same thing, instead of going back to the voters and saying, listen, we appreciate what you did for us, and we're going to reduce it by 0.2 or whatever the case may be. Having said that, is there there are statistics to show how many riders that actually ride the SMART in Macomb County, and I'm sure there are statistics to show how many riders come out of Wayne County and use SMART, and does somebody have those figures?
Yes, and I'll have somebody talk about that in a second, but for 32 years, I was an elected politician. I chaired the Wayne County Board and I chaired this board. I was in the legislature and the Senate for 3 terms. I never voted for a tax increase in any of those places. The only time I've ever asked for a tax increase was because of the fact that SMART would have gone out of existence without buying new buses. And I mean it. The buses had been repaired so often that our frames were failing, so if you fixed them, it didn't matter because the frame was failing. It's the only time in a 42 career that I proposed a approval of a tax increase in any place. I'm not asking for a tax increase this time. I'm asking to stay where we're at. Here's the reason why. Number one, as you saw from the chart, we're the second lowest in the state in terms of being able to operate our operation. We're the only place in the nation that's being asked to operate an operation with opt-out communities. We have places like Livonia that are gigantic that have opted out, so we get no tax income from them. On top of that, all of our costs, except for the fact that we've changed to propane and the fact that we have new buses, so we've been able to manage our maintenance costs, all of our other costs go up, and they continue to go up because that's the way the cost of living is. We're in a circumstance where we're being asked to do the equivalence of 9 other districts in square miles, where they get 2 and 3 mills with 1 mill or slightly less in terms of a Headley rollback. And I think the most important thing as an elected politician that I would say to you is that I have always felt that the thing to do is, more importantly than anything else, pay attention to what the public wants. It's one of the reasons we're doing fast, because the public wants an express system. But I can tell you this much. Nothing tells me more about what the public wants than if they vote with their pocketbooks. The last millage request, which was almost doubling the millage, passed over the 3 counties by 66%. I don't know of other millages that passed by 66%. That tells me that the public loved what we were doing and wanted us to keep doing it. And that was when we were asking for an increase. We're not asking for that this
May
time.
I interrupt for just a second? It's 6 o'clock and we still have other presentations, so I just want to get to, and I appreciate if I were you, I'd be doing the same thing, but I really need to get to the questions and answers because we still have another presentation and we've got guests downstairs. I apologize for the interruption.
I understand, Madam Chairperson.
So the ridership numbers, for fixed route, it was 41% of our fixed route riders were on Macomb County routes, 36% of our connector ridership, and about 40% of our CPP ridership. And that's proportionally quite a bit higher than Oakland and Wayne, and that kind of speaks to the fact that Macomb's the easiest to serve efficiently, of the 3 counties because it is all opt-in. I think, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, while you're there, when you mentioned these connector routes, and you mentioned that you pick up seniors with a reservation in advance, I mean, don't the local municipalities do this with their senior citizen program? I mean, Sterling Heights does. We have our own bus picks up our people, takes them to shopping and doctors and whatever, so.
True. We can take riders farther afield, so usually those community programs are
We're
just
limited.
within their community. Ours can go up to 10 or a little bit more miles. So it's kind of, think of it as a little bit different type of service. Each one's filling a different gap.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you. On the subject of ridership, do you have those sorted by zip code, where they originated at?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other speakers on the presentation, so I'm going to move on to the resolution approving the, oh, I'm sorry, a motion to receive and file. Moved by Carabelli, supported by Sauger. Please vote on your iPad. Yes. All right, the motion passes 13-0. Now I'm going to move on to the resolution approving language for the Macomb County Public Transportation Millage to appear on the August 7, 2018 ballot. I'm going to seek a motion. Moved by Commissioner Myjak, supported by Commissioner Lucido. What I'm thinking is if there's any debate on this, can we debate it after at full board? Because we're just moving it to full board, and full board's tonight.
I've got an amendment I'd like to propose.
Okay,
May I propose it, Madam Chair?
go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to propose that we amend the section where it says now therefore be it resolved, where it states 1 mil, and amend that to state 0.59 mil, which is the rate that was established up until 2014. And if that's a second, I'd like to speak to it if I could.
Okay, the amendment is moved by Commissioner Gillette, supported by Commissioner Kraft. Just want to remind everybody, we're not the only county involved in this thing. Go ahead, please briefly.
I'll be brief. What I'd like to primarily state is that 3%, according to the chart that was presented in the presentation, 3% of the revenue spent by SMART are for the community services buses. 75% is for the line haul buses. Even when we reduce this millage rate, with the funds that are coming in from the state gas tax revenues and our vehicle registration fees, we will have plenty of money to support our community service buses, the ones that run back and forth and so forth. That is a very small percent of what they spend. According to their chart, 3%. So I believe that we owe it to the voters with what has been declines in ridership and what frankly should be more in line with our priorities, that we reestablish the rate that was in effect until 2014, which was a completely acceptable rate at that time until they need to replace some buses. And that's, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any other speakers on the amendment. Okay, so we're voting on the amendment first. So please vote on your iPad. Okay, that motion fails 6-7, so voting on the... Well, there's no such thing as a friendly amendment. If you want to offer an amendment, go ahead. What's the amendment, Commissioner
I'd like to
Carabelli?
offer the amendment to keep the mills the same from the rollback at .9926 and not increase it to 1 mil. I would like to keep the mills the same as what they are today at .9926 and not up it to a full mill.
Is there support for the amendment? Supported, moved by Carabelli, supported by Romano. The explanation for that is because of Headley, if they sod a mill over time, it starts rolling down because when one person starts paying more taxes, another person has to start paying less. It's just the whole system of taxes. So that's what he's talking about. So it would be .9926 as opposed to the 1 mil they're trying to roll back to the original request. Okay, I don't see any speakers. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Carabelli.
And I only state this because you just seen the rolls came in, and you've seen the 4% increase. So they're getting more money than what they would have had before. And I think it's more than what they've even asked for by anticipating back during the bad times. So that's why I made that motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Toko.
Thank you. Steve, I saw you kind of shaking your head. Can you weigh in on that?
I understand where Commissioner Carabelli's coming from. I would just say that I fully expect there's going to be another Headley rollback this year. So, no crystal ball, but as you was, I'm just it's really not my millage to worry about. But we will have another rollback. I'm quite sure because, as you saw in the equalization report, most of the growth in the SEV at least was from market changes and not new construction. I would expect something very similar. We've had 2 rollbacks, one each of the last 2 years. I would suspect another rollback this year. This is my only comment. So.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Leonetti. And may I remind everybody we have guests downstairs.
I'll make it quick. Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just say this. I want to put it to the voters, and I want the voters to pass this. And we're all aware, we've got it all winter about roads. So, however we do this, whether it be the amendment or what was proposed originally, let's keep in mind that it's going to go to the voters. And let's keep in mind, at least from my perspective, I would certainly like the voters to consider this. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and before I call Chair Smith, just very quickly, remember, this is not a single county millage. So we're going to create problems if we do 1 millage for one county and do something else for the other counties. That's where I see this going.
Point of information, Madam Chair. You made a statement, and if I can add,
Well,
for informational purposes, you said that. They said the dollars that come in out of here come back plus the additional funds. So whatever millage you pass, those are the dollars that are coming back into our county. They just said that's how they do it in all the counties. So be careful how you stated that.
No, I think what I'm referring to is they have to go out and sell this thing. And I'm assuming the way that they would do their selling of this thing and the information thing is their whole intent is that everything is going to be the same for the different counties. It could just throw a wrench into things. That's my only suggestion. But I understand what you're saying. Chair Smith.
Thanks. 3 things. One, the difference between the .9926 and the 1 is .0073, which is such a microscopic number. It seems kind of silly to have this big of a discussion on it, although I understand it's money, so don't, you know. But Smart has been a very good steward of our tax dollars, and I can see that. You can see how they're running their business compared to all these other programs that are just basically rolling in money, comparatively speaking. And last but not least, I think that what they've done with the Smart, or with the FAST system, has effectively given us an out on the RTA. So that tax that we're going to be looking at it someday, maybe having to vote on, I don't understand why I need an RTA bus running up and down Gratiot when I've also got a Smart bus that's brand new and clean and fast, running the same route and getting me to the airport. So I'm going to respectfully vote no on Commissioner Carabelli's amendment and yes on the resolution.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette, you have 30 seconds.
I withdrew at your hand signal.
Okay. All right. Okay. Please vote on Commissioner Carabelli's amendment. Motion fails 5-8. So we're moving on to the original resolution. I already got, I got a motion in support, so please vote on the original resolution. Yes, yeah, we're moving to move it to full board. Okay, that motion passes 10-3. There may be more debate at full board, just giving you a heads up. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the resolution designating public fund depositories in compliance with Act 40, with Act 40. I'm just going to stop at that. Is it moved by Duje, supported, was that Myjack?
Commissioners, just real quick before you vote, I just wanted to highlight, due to a clerical error in the cover letter, that the only difference in the resolution being presented today is the fact that we've changed private bank to CBIC, which is a result of a merger, and we're adding Wells Fargo. I just wanted to highlight that for you guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please vote on your iPads. Motion passes 13-0. Under correspondence, we have a treasurer's report. I'll do a motion to receive and file, and I'm assuming that Mr. Biondo would like to speak to it. Moved by Gillette, supported by Sager.
Just two quick
Go ahead.
comments. I just wanted a big picture. 2017, Treasurer's Office was able to generate an additional $2 million in investment income for the county. That brought us up to $7 million roughly in investment income compared to 2016, where we're at $5 million. I also wanted to highlight that the second, third, and fourth quarters are being presented today, and the delay was due to the transition from our old investment officer to the new one that happened in the third quarter of last year. Going forward, our commitment to the board as far as transparency is to deliver the quarterly reports within a month, say, of the end of the quarter. Thank you.
Don't walk away just yet. Commissioner Toko.
Thank you. With regard to the finances in the treasurer's office, is there a statutory reason why we're not accepting credit card payments?
As far as the treasurer's office, when people are paying taxes,
Yes.
we do accept credit card payments on a case-by-case basis. As you can imagine, individuals that are dealing with delinquent taxes are oftentimes in situations where transferring the essentially debt to the credit card, where they're going to be paying 20, 30%, or whatever, 20 to 25% on interest compared to the 18% that they would statutorily pay to the county. In light of in the view of the treasurer, we don't want to put them in a worse situation where if they can't handle their finances at the current 18% interest rate that we charge under the state law, from our point of view, unless it's a limited situation where maybe you have a sophisticated business owner who can handle that decision, we don't want to put someone in a worse spot, if that answers your question, Commissioner.
It does, and it's disappointing, because when I went to pay property taxes, I could not use a debit card. I could not use a credit card. It was cash, or what was it, check? But they would not take a credit or a debit card. And there was a long line of people, and people were having to leave and go pay ATM fees and come back, or if they couldn't get back, and the last day that the taxes were due, I happened to be up there. There was a very long line. People who had waited in line had to leave, and if they didn't come back that night and pay it, then they risk being really assessed a much higher fee the following day.
We do everything we can to accommodate payments. Certainly on the last day that people come in after 3 years of delinquent taxes, we do everything we can to process those payments. Because of the timing involved, when we get to the point of the last day that people have to pay, due to, unfortunately, some fraudulent behavior in the past by other taxpayers, we require at that point for the checks to be certified, or basically we have to do that to avoid that situation. So hopefully that answers your question.
So the answer is no, you don't take credit cards.
We do take credit cards, but it's on a case-by-case basis in limited situations, because again,
That wasn't offered to me or any of the other people that were in the line. And I have an issue with that, and I'd like to bring it up at a later date. I know that today we're trying to move things along, but for people to come in here and be able to use a credit card in the clerk's office and other departments, or a debit card, I had a big issue with that, and I was really bothered by the long line of people there that were turned away because they couldn't use their debit card.
we'd be
Well,
more than
why
happy
don't
to
we,
have that
if we
discussion.
don't, yeah, if you don't mind, maybe we could plan to bring them back for agenda item just specific to that, so everybody could ask questions on it?
That would be fine. That would be fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll get together and we'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion to receive and file. Please vote on your iPads.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Motion passes 13-0. Thank you. New business, is there new business? See, you want to wait till full board? Okay. All right, public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Does anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, motion to adjourn by Duge, supported by Romano. Please vote on your iPads.
Please read your notes on what's going on with the volunteers if you haven't already.
Okay.
All right, motion passes 13-0. We're adjourned.